some people falsely hope that the re-election of Donald Trump solved all our problems. As we've been sharing in our Four Horsemen of the American Apocalypse series, there are still major threats. The red, communism; the green, Sharia-induced civilization jihad; and the blue, which represents one world globalism. Sadly, none of this evil trifecta is surrendered. In fact, all three have accelerated in one way or another. As just one example, the climate crowd has gathered in Brazil for COP30. To learn what they're doing, let's check in with our friend Craig Rucker, who's attending the conference. Craig is a co-founder of CFACT and currently serves as its president. Widely heralded as a leader in the free market environmental think tank community in Washington, D.C., Rucker is a frequent guest on radio, talk shows. He's written extensively in numerous publications, and he's appeared in such media outlets as Fox News, OANN, Washington Times, The Wall Street Journal, and The Hill, among others. Welcome, Craig, to the Economic War Room.
Pleasure to be on, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
And you're coming to us from Brazil right now. Why are you there?
Well, we're here to be the unofficial delegation since the United States has pulled out of the climate negotiations. We've been going to these since the 1990s. I myself have been to 27 of them, stretching back to the 1990s, and really to kind of monitor what the UN is doing, try and urge other delegations to follow the U.S. lead and pull out of this, and to expose the fraudulent science and get on programs like this one to get the facts of what's really going on in Brazil here and at these COP meetings, because you're not going to hear it from the mainstream media.
Definitely not, but they just ignore it as if the conference weren't important. Is the conference important, and will it impact lives, what they're doing?
Oh, yeah. Well, absolutely. We wouldn't be here if we didn't think there's a lot at stake. We, of course, know that the UN has been meeting for a long time and has plans. They're using the climate as a reason to try and usher in a big pot of money that they can get for themselves to regulate economies of nation states by going after their energy and transportation structures, and really kind of push a top-down collectivist vision for how the world ought to be run. And we've been calling out this for many, many decades. And you'll see this at this particular meeting in Belém, because one of the biggest things they're talking about is this global climate fund. They want to get $300 billion per year flowing from developed countries like the United States, Western Europe, Japan, Australia, etc., to the UN, which would then get a cut. And they would, of course, dole this out to the rest of the nations around the world. So this is the type of scam that they're doing. They ultimately want to see it get to about $1.3 trillion per year by the year 2035. It's a big welfare transfer payment. American taxpayers will be best over. And we need to call it out and warn people of what's in store. If, in fact, the next election goes the other way, we may be facing this.
That's sounds a lot like National Socialism, not the Nazi kind, but the idea of, hey, look, you may not be contributing as much economically to the world, but we're going to take from those that have and give it to those that have not in some massive tax scheme, but in the form of payments. And our government's willingly gone along with that for decades, and now we're hopefully pulling back from it.
Exactly. Well, we know the Biden administration was all in. Prior to that, the Obama administration actually signed on to the Paris Accords. We right now have pulled out, and there is no official U.S. delegation. We had Gavin Newsom come down here, and he said, therefore, he's the official delegate to this particular convention. We, of course, took issue with that and said we're the official delegates because we reflect more closely what the president's position is on this issue. But Brazil is all about, they got a new president in Lulu who got in many cases, people think fraudulently. And he has been just running the show with an iron fist. He's actually attacked those who are like us, going out on programs like yours, saying that this needs to be shut down. The social media, the fake news, as he calls it, needs to be squelched. He's done that here in Brazil, and he's calling on nations everywhere. It just did so within the last day to try and do that so people don't learn the real facts of what's going on behind the curtain.
Well, at least in America, we still have a free press and a First Amendment, so we have the opportunity to share the truth as we see it. But there were some protesters. What was that all about? I saw some radical protesters showing up at the conference.
Yes, as a matter of fact, they did a pretty good job of trying to squelch all this, but apparently some indigenous peoples crashed the gates late Tuesday night here, complaining that they were not being represented. This is their land. Of course, we're holding this in Belém, and the reason they're holding it out here is so the delegates could experience the rainforest and be closer to indigenous peoples, which is a very politically correct thing. Of course, they're building a major highway out here and chopping the forest down because it's too small of a venue. This is a 14-kilometer stretch that they've done so that the people can take their private limos here. But the indigenous people were upset. They crashed the gate. They were joined by some socialists who I think kind of co-opted their cause. And I know this because when I went to talk to these indigenous people, and we have it on our website, they're not a bunch of collectivist, Marxist-type people. They are actually people that are upset with the current government that is basically using their land, taking their land, and they're not even having a voice in how it's used or getting any benefit from the economic development that's going on. It's a lot of these companies are state-run in Brazil, and it's not benefiting the locals. So I actually think their cause is somewhat correct, but it's window dressing here.
Yeah, well, and they're trying to squelch it because they're hypocrites, right? Most of the world is being told, oh, no, we're the good people. We care about average people and indigenous people and the little guy. And in reality, they don't. They care about their own power. This is nothing other than animal farm. And apparently the indigenous people in Brazil are less equal than the world leaders who are flying in on their private jets. I mean, there's obviously blatant hypocrisy here.
Yeah, and it's even grosser than that. They divide this up into the green zone and blue zone here. We have access to both at CFAC. The blue zone's where the official delegates are. The green zone's where the people are, quote unquote people. And if you go into the green zone, like I did yesterday, they actually display the indigenous people on mats. They're like sitting down. They're like decor as you go about and dine in the restaurants and maybe sip your wine. They're looking at them and it's all a charade, and the indigenous people had enough, which is why they crashed this program back on Tuesday.
Well, I don't blame them for crashing the program. I think it needs to be exposed that the harsh boot of the United Nations is coming down on the indigenous people and trying to keep them from silenced. All right, Craig, we're going to have to take a break. When we come back, I want to ask you a question about social action and what that means. So we'll take a break. We'll be right back after this. In uncertain times, finding stability in the economy can feel challenging. But what if you could navigate economic volatility while honoring your biblical values? At Timothy Plan, they believe this balance is possible. Timothy Plan filters its volatility-weighted ETFs and family of mutual funds through a biblical pro-life and pro-family lens, so you can see competitive returns and moral responsibility, helping you to weather the economic storms. With Timothy Plan, align your investments with your values while adapting to our ever-changing culture. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has been recognized leader in biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, your bridge between faith, finances, and the future. Visit timothyplan.com or call 1-800-TIM-PLAN or 1-800-846-7526. Investing includes risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com.
Gold holds its value far better than the US dollar. Let's see what happens when I go in the sweet shop and pay with gold. Can I pay with gold?
I mean, I'll take a wait, find out how much it costs.
Do you know what? Basically, do you know why I'm even using gold?
I do not.
It holds its value over time, but it's a bit difficult to spend, isn't it? Do you take this?
Yes.
That's MasterCard. Yeah, but I'm actually going to pay with gold, believe it or not, using this. That's my MasterCard, and it's linked to my gold wallet. So let's just watch that. Authorizing. Yeah, add a tip.
Thank you.
So this is your store?
Yes, sir.
And how much gold did I pay?
0.2243 grams.
Yeah, success. Bought with gold, paid with glint.
We're speaking with Craig Rucker. He's from right now in Brazil. He's representing CFACT at the big climate conference held by the United Nations. And right before the break, I had the question, what's the deal with social action? What does that mean?
Well, down here in Brazil, they are very much about social action. They have a bunch of NGOs. In fact, I think there's 1,100 of them represented at counter summit to this one. They call it the People's Movement that's countering this. And essentially, their philosophy is climate change is not about weather patterns. It's not about sunspot activity or weather. What climate is influenced by, what Mother Earth Gaia is influenced by, it's how much we use the right pronouns and embrace woke culture. Because if we embrace woke culture, Mother Earth will maybe not throw so many temper tantrums and warm the Earth. And I kid you not, they actually believe they can control the climate here if the governments get together. So you have these groups that'll be marching on Saturday. It's like, I forget what morning. Unity Day or something of that sort, where there's going to be thousands of them on the streets of Belém, marching for social justice. Of course, what they mean by that, a lot of these groups are, they want a statue of Marx in every corner. They're very far left organizations, coupled with some indigenous organizations and feminist organizations and kind of new agey organizations. That'll be all protesting, saying that the climate is mad at us. Mother Earth Gaia is mad at us. It's time for us to have gender equality, it's time for us to have feminist rights. And this is part and parcel with what you're seeing at the side events here at COP30 and what the message is.
That led me, I was going to ask the question later, is this a religion? You just basically described it is a religion, and they're trying to appease the goddess of the earth by going into, critical theory and Marxism and everything else. Am I getting that?
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, I've been to some side events, and this goes back even within recent years, where they actually do have prayer vigils, and they will talk about the earth as though it's some pagan goddess, that she's mad at us. And, there's even been prayer vigils. They're kind of interfaith prayer vigils. But that is a component that's here. And in fact, they'll do dramatic things even off-site. For example, a couple of years ago, there was one of these conferences in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, which wasn't far from where Mount Sinai was. And what a number of the NGOs did is they decided to do a little stage theater, go up on Sinai and bring back a new 10 commandments that were commandments, not like the old ones like don't commit adultery, don't murder. Those are passé. We don't need those anymore, I guess these folks say. We need ones on recycling and on lowering your carbon emissions and things of that sort. Those are the ones that really are important in this new kind of new agey religion. I'm not making this up. This is what they did. Going back as far as one of the summits they had in South Africa, which we attended back in 2001, they actually had a new Ark of the Covenant with the new 10 Commandments also that was put in, which people can find if they just Google it. We have pictures of it at CPAC that we shared with the nation. So yes, I think some of the people here, this is a religious cause, and trying to argue with them scientific facts is not going to get you very far.
Well, I know that there are some scientists there, and I think they're on the climate scam gravy train. They're writing papers because that's what the government wants and pays for, and I get that. I mean, that's a flaw in capitalism. Is a capitalist will meet any need if somebody's willing to pay for it, I'm willing to produce it. Do you interact with any of the scientists who say this is just garbage? I can't believe that they're treating this like a religion. Do they laugh behind the backs of the cameras?
It's a really interesting thing. And I have talked to numerous ones on the side. A lot of times when you come to conferences like this, it's kind of disarming for them. They don't expect people that maybe support Trump or the more conservative / libertarian view are even here. So they'll let their guard down. And I've had numerous discussions with them where they will candidly tell me things like, sea level, they're not rising, any more than they did 200-300 years ago. We're not seeing really an increase in hurricane activity, blah, blah, blah. And you would push them and say, okay, so why are we not admitting this? And it's, as you could imagine, they know that to do so, their grants would be diminished. They'd be a pariah. You would be no longer welcome at cocktail parties. And so this is not the type of thing that you're ever going to get them to do because, there's a lot of pressure on you trying to get published in a peer-reviewed journal. All you got to do is have one of these journals realize that you may be skeptical of the climate issue, and good luck.
Yep, no. So what's driving the push? Is it fame, money, China, hatred, jealousy, total delusion? Dr. Robert Malone called this COP30 a giant psyop. What do you think is really driving this?
I think it's one of the things you always get into a danger is trying to pigeonhole, let's say everybody's in it for the same thing. I think you have a confluence of different things that are going on here. You certainly have that religious component, people that kind of think this is like Mother Earth's getting hurt. That's a minority here. You have a number of people that are grifters. They might be people with the solar energy company of selling widgets that nobody wants, but they will reduce your carbon footprint. So you got a strong money component that's going on here. Others are just greenwashing. They want to show up here so they can at least sell the idea that they're doing something about climate because they figure it's good public relations. You got politicians here that think that their constituents want them to be here, so it's a chance to come and party for a little bit and say a speech or two and get out. And then you got the truly power hungry. I would actually say they're ideologically on the socialist side, maybe strong government side. And I actually think that's a leadership. I think they deem this as a way to get power and money, the two oldest motives in the thing. And as evidence of that, all you got to do is look at this Green Climate Fund, which they want to give $1.3 trillion, as I said earlier, by the year 2035. And they want to regulate. They have these nationally determined contributions, which they require in the Paris Accord for all nations to basically tell them how their energy is going to be used. And energy runs an economy. They got to get approval by the UN. They tried to sneak through carbon taxes on shipping. They did the same on airlines. They're trying to become an independent government and get their revenues by ways other than having to go beg for it from nations with voluntary contributions.
And so we've seen the richest among us and maybe the least among us, like Bill Gates and Greta Thunberg, who were, massively on the climate bandwagon. But both of them have recently either just by omission or by admission kind of jumped off the climate train. I know we're going to have to take another break, but when we come back, I want to ask you your thoughts on what happened with Bill Gates and why he shifted. And Greta Thunberg has kind of dropped it like a hot potato so that she could focus on Gaza, which seems kind of schizophrenic to me, and all this. So we're talking with Greg Rucker. We're talking about COP30 in Brazil, and we're talking about the climate scam. We'll be right back with him and more right after this break.
Somewhere a perversion has taken place. Our natural unalienable rights are now considered to be a dispensation of government, and freedom has never been so fragile, so close to slipping from our grasp as it is at this moment.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It has to be fought for and defended by each generation.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
In this most critical time in our nation's history, now more than ever, Americans need to align with companies that support our constitutional rights and God-given freedoms. Patriot Mobile supports your values and provides exceptional 100% US-based customer service. Join the movement today. Go to patriotmobile.com or call 972-PATRIOT.
I'm outside Babe's, which I'm told is the quintessential chicken restaurant here in Roanoke, Texas. Let's go and see if we can buy the food in here, chicken with gold.
This is gonna be the fried chicken.
This is unbelievable. How am I going to fit all this in? I seriously actually don't know how to begin with this. This is so overwhelming. Do you think I can pay with gold?
I don't know. You may have to ask the cashier. I don't handle it.
Can I pay with gold? But actually, you said I could pay with this? Okay, I'm gonna pay with this, but I'm gonna pay with gold. So look at the price of gold going up. That's pretty cool, yeah? Right, this is Babes, yeah? How much gold did I pay? Gold, how many grams?
0.26.
0.26, quarter of a gram of gold. How about that?
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool, yeah. Success! All with gold, paid with glint.
Okay, Craig, I mentioned right before the break, Bill Gates made this, very weak statement, but nevertheless profound statement. And he said, well, we know that the climate crisis is not going to kill us all in 5 years or whatever. Explain what you think was happening there. Why did he admit that, and what's behind it?
Well, first and foremost, and I think you kind of hit at it, he didn't totally walk away from the climate issue. He said it and started by saying, still a serious issue, but let's face it, humanity's not going to die with that. We're better to move with adaptation to it as weather changes or patterns change, and than it is to try to change the way humanity does business. Kind of a common sense way of looking at it. I myself don't think we're in a climate apocalypse, but if we could do some things to move to nuclear power, that's not a bad thing. That's something I could even agree with them on to a degree. But the bottom line is he gets attacked viciously by everyone on the left. We had Al Gore come here, I think just yesterday, right here at Malem, and he says that he thinks the reason that you're seeing Bill Gates do this is he's afraid of Donald Trump, and he's trying to buy his goodness. Nobody's afraid of Donald Trump that's on the left. You got Gavin Newsom down here. You got a bunch of Democratic governors down here. This is who they're campaigning against. The more Donald Trump they can bring up, the better. They think that this is their ticket for victory in a very blue area, and it may well be. But the bottom line is that I think Bill Gates is actually just speaking the obvious. He's been in this all the time to make money, and he tried to peddle this idea of fake meat. He even bought up a lot of American farmland out west, and he's been always in funding through the Gates Foundation a lot of the climate alarmist groups. So his recent backtracking, I think, is kind of done and timed, maybe so he can get along with the administration. But also, I think the time has come that a lot of people are seeing self-evidently many of the exaggerated claims just aren't true. They haven't panned out. So maybe saving face a little bit.
That is kind of an inconvenient truth, to borrow a phrase, because when I was in college, everybody was talking about how we were going into massive global cooling. And I remember as a kid fearing that where I was growing up in Oklahoma was going to be frozen over and wondering how I'm going to go further south and all that. None of that happened, and all the 5-year predictions. So that explains maybe Bill Gates is looking to make a little money from the climate mitigation and saying, here's a way that we can deal with it. Well, weather always changes. Climate changes over time, not from man-made activities, but it just happens. But Greta, why isn't she with you in Brazil? Or maybe she is. Is she there? And why has she picked up the Palestinian issue, which seems to have nothing to do with the climate?
And you bring up a good issue. I can't say what I would know what her reasons for moving from climate to that, other than the fact that climate continues to poll very low on every political poll. That when people go to vote, it doesn't grab the attention that some of the other issues do. So my guess is that she feels she could be, or her parents do, or whoever her handlers are, feels she can be used more effectively to push one end of liberalism other than climate change. She hasn't abandoned it entirely. Well, you have to see. This weekend, they're having a People's March going on Saturday. If rumors have it, very probable she'll be in attendance for that. So while she may have stepped back from it, I'm not entirely sure she'd entirely abandoned it. She did make a very embarrassing tweet a couple of years ago that she thought the end would happen in 2023. And that's come and gone. And we haven't experienced it. She took that off right after 2023 happened. So I don't know. It's a good question as to what her motivations are.
So she seems actually delusional in that respect. And honestly, I think her perspective, even in Gaza, is off. But it seems like we may be winning, or are we losing the war of ideas? I mean, it seems maybe we're winning in the short run. In the long run, we still have this massive battle ahead of us because there's so much money. What's your perspective, and what are your final thoughts from the conference there in Brazil?
Yes, I think it will always be a seesaw battle. We had, for example, some victory back in 2016 when Trump pulled us out of the Paris Accord, which was quickly reversed in 2020 when Biden won. And then, of course, it's been reversed again with Donald Trump in. We are bound to continue seeing this sort of ping-ponging back and forth. At the moment, yes, we are winning. I think that across the country, there's been a pullback from electric vehicles. We're finding that solar and wind are not cutting it. So more and more people are turning to natural gas. They're even talking about nuclear power now. So there's a lot of things to be cheerful about, but one election away could go the other way. So my thought is that while we have the opportunity between here and the next election, it would be very good for the president to put forward this global climate treaty that was signed by George H. Bush back in 1992. See, part of the reason for the ping-ponging is we did initially, through George H. Bush, sign on to this treaty, but it's never been fully ratified. So we can put it before the Senate and say, according to our Constitution, there's supposed to be 2/3 vote. It would almost certainly be rejected. And once it's rejected, then we're officially out of this entire global warming international scheme. And so right now, that's where I would like to see it go. As far as my reflections on this particular COP, I see a lot of countries. You got countries like Italy, Argentina, Hungary, Poland, which have expressed extreme skepticism. We had occasion during our time in the Blue Zone a few days ago to talk to people from Middle Eastern countries, the United Arab Emirates, Pakistan, and others. I think there is some momentum, but I think everybody wants to be second, other than the United States. I said, so the first one that goes, I think that you may see more of them come. But at the moment, I think everybody's waiting to see who's that first one.
Okay, we got about a minute left. Tell us about CFACT and how people can support your good work.
All right, CFACT is a free market environmental group. We've been around since 1985. We work on the whole gamut of environmental issues from clean air, clean water, climate change, all these, but we do it from traditional Western values, Teddy Roosevelt values, conservative values. We've got a board of scientists and academics who work on college campuses. We do all sorts of things to try and educate the public about what we think is wrong with the green movement in that it's been hijacked by those on the political left. To find out more about us, you can simply go to our website at cfact.org. That's cfact.org.
cfact.org, and people can donate. Are you a nonprofit that they get a tax deduction if they donate?
Absolutely. We are a nonprofit, and by joining us, you can get a free online, which would subscription to our email newsletter, and you can find out more information. And if you choose to support us financially, which we always encourage people to do, you could also donate there online as well. cfact.org. Craig Rucker, thank you so much. All right, we're going to summarize all this in our free economic battle plan. You can get a copy of it at economicwarroom.com. Sign up and you'll get weekly emails and great information like this. Remember, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view it as a battle space. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.